And welcome to the Economic Development Committee. I hereby call on November 8th, 2023, a meeting of the Town of Hanson Economic Development Committee to order at actually 7:07. I'd like to announce for all those in attendance that this meeting is being recorded for distribution on Whitman-Hanson Community Access. Playback times and other related information on this recording can be found at whca.tv. We're calling the meeting to order. Let the record reflect that we have Mr. Cohen, Mr. Ernst, and Ms. Kennett. And we also have guests, Melissa Johnson, who's here, Johnston, and Paul Serra. And then we've got Frank, and I'm going to kill his name, Mahady.
Frank Mahady.
Okay. Dialing in. Okay. All right, great. So we'll start off. Did you gentlemen have an opportunity to read the minutes from our last meeting?
Yes.
Yep, I think they
Was there
look
anything?
good.
Okay.
Yeah. I make a motion to approve the minutes of October 11th, 2023.
Okay, great. Do I have a second? Okay, great, thanks. All in favor? And also, Chris, because you're joining virtually, we need you to, I know this is annoying, but announce your name and your vote every time that you take a vote virtually.
Sure. First Ernest is a yes.
Okay. I'm a yes. Oh, you're a yes. Okay, great. All right, fantastic. With that, we will move on to a presentation by Melissa Johnston on reutilization of the former Plymouth County Nurses' Quarters. Are you Johnston or Johnson?
Johnston with a T.
Okay, all right. I just wanted, that doesn't mean I won't get it wrong, because honestly, once I try to get something right, I just get on a one-track mind on what it is. So just in the way of a bit of a background, Melissa and her husband and Kurt Tarvis, who I believe you guys know from a variety of different things, but most things historical, had quite a while ago walked through the front portion of the Plymouth County Hospital, what was formerly the nurses' quarters, because Melissa's got a vision. And so that's what she's here to share with us. And I'm excited about it because I know there's probably a lot of hurdles between here and fruition, you know, seeing this vision to fruition. But everything has to start with a dream, an idea. And so I think that's where we're at tonight, is Melissa's going to share it with us and hopefully get us all jazzercised about it, and then we can decide what the next steps are. Yeah.
Okay. So I am a licensed mental health counselor, and I have a private practice in Hanover, which I would prefer to be in Hanson. And I feel like the nurses building is the perfect setting for a wellness center, to include not just counseling, but many other services.
Can I just, I'm sorry, can I just check in? Chris, are you able to hear Melissa? Oh boy, did we lose everybody?
Yeah, I can hear her.
Oh, okay, all right, okay,
Sounds like
great,
maybe
okay,
just-
all right.
I don't think we lost anyone.
So this is a plan for revitalization of the PCH nurses building. And services present in our town currently include dentists, chiropractors, hair and nail salons, restaurants, realtors, and many more. However, we're missing something very important, and that would be mental health services. This is a much-needed service in our community. An internet search did not locate a physical counseling office in our town, at least not one that I could find. Recent events have caused an increased need for mental health services and also a shortage of counselors. Behavioral health crisis. Many reasons led to the current mental health crisis in Massachusetts and across the country, such as high rates of divorce, increased substance use, financial instability, food insecurity, and housing challenges. These are just a few of the challenges that have always existed. However, the COVID pandemic markedly decreased people's ability to cope with stressors. With illness and isolation came an unbearable increase in loneliness, anxiety, depression, domestic violence, and self-harm. Mental health counselors were in high demand during COVID. The increased need for services caused burnout among counselors, and this created a deficit within the counseling field that continues today. People 65 plus. Until recently, this demographic has had limitations on access to mental health services due to the Medicare component that is required by state law. Only licensed clinical social workers were contracted to accept Medicare, and only a small number of them actually accepted it. This left many people 65 plus and those under 65 with a disability unable to obtain covered mental health services. Having to pay out of pocket or even on a sliding scale was not always a choice for those on a fixed income. Breaking barriers. Beginning in 2024, for the first time, all licensed counselors will be able to accept Medicare. So people 65 plus and those under 65 with disabilities will now have many more options to obtain covered services. This is a vast improvement to provide services to this demographic. The focus on services would include individual counseling, couples counseling, family counseling, and group counseling.
There you go.
Secondary services would include a teaching component, supervision of counseling students through internships, training of pre-licensed clinicians, continuing education classes for licensed counselors. And there's a nice picture of the old place. These were taken about a year or so ago. That was the walkthrough that you mentioned,
Yeah.
and that's, for anyone who hasn't been inside recently, that's the, on the left, the entrance at the front door.
Yeah, that's the front door.
The next one is the upstairs hall. Top right is the downstairs hall, and then downstairs is like a big room that's kind of used for chair storage. And this is a left picture is downstairs room, and I believe the right picture is upstairs as well. And then there's the nice stairway that I really like. A new life for the old building. So this is what the this isn't the stairway, but it's what it could look like, just to give a visual that, you know, you can update it with an old look. So keeping the character of the building and highlighting its history while incorporating new materials with design elements of the past. Actively using the nurses' building will provide needed services to our community, generate revenue for the town, draw positive interest to the historical significance of the property, and allow for repairs and upkeep of the building. The location of the nurses' building would offer peaceful and aesthetically pleasing views of the grounds. The PCH Meadows walking trail, which is conducive to both physical and emotional well-being, and public transportation options. If walls could talk. 73 years of history. From 1919 to 1992, PCH was the centerpiece of Hanson. The hospital provided care and comfort to thousands of sick, along with employment to hundreds of residents and education to many. Plymouth County Hospital Nurses Building, a remnant of the past. A nice old picture there. Breathing life back into its halls. The Nurses Building is the last remaining structure of the once great Plymouth County Hospital. Although we have lost the main hospital, the Nurses Building can still serve Hanson well. revitalizing its tradition of providing care to the community and education to future students. So I have a little story. It was one night Paul and I went to the beekeepers meeting, and it was dark out when we left, and when I turned around and looked at the building, and it was all lit up, and there was so many people coming and going, and it was really nice. Until I looked to the front of the building, and it was all dark and sad and lonely looking, and it reminded me of a really old poem called The House with No One in It, I think, from 1914, Joyce Kilmer. I'll let you read it for yourself on the next screen, unless you'd like that. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Well, that makes me want to weep.
Oh.
Um,
Any questions?
Okay, so I think it's great. We do, one of the things we had talked about at our strategic planning session was, what did I call it? Optimization of town assets. In other words, how do we get money out of everything that we own? And this would be in keeping with that. But as we've discussed, there's many steps to, getting that building into compliance, Tony, I know you've looked at the building, you've applied for some grant money for the building, which I don't think we got that grant money, but it doesn't mean we're gonna give up, right?
Right.
So what are your thoughts on this?
I applied for $1 million grant under the underutilized properties through the One Stop program, but they turned it down this year, but I'm still gonna go after it again next year. I did receive some estimates just based on photographs for the two buildings, and again, this is just estimates. It would be about 4.5 million, they figured, to redo both buildings.
When you say both, are we talking Bonnie House too?
No,
Oh.
Just the two.
The two,
yeah,
that are, okay.
those
Yeah,
two buildings, yeah. I mean, they're connected, but I
Yes,
look at them
okay.
as two separate
Yeah,
buildings.
yeah. Yeah.
So I went after the $1 million grant was for the front building, because that's the one that's empty. And so I'll, next year, next round, I'm gonna go after the $1 million grant again, but I'm gonna use both buildings as part of the application, because I think the food pantry may be a way of sort of helping us out to maybe get the grant. But some of the things that you're pointing out here are some of the things I put in the grant this time around, that front building could be used for. Offices, for counseling, medical, something that might support the food pantry, an ancillary of the food pantry, conference rooms, or offices. So those are all things that I threw in there. But this time around we didn't get it, but I'm not giving up on it. So I'm going to chase it again next year.
And in terms of, so the 4 point whatever million, I mean, the other thing that I mentioned to Melissa is the back portion of that building was already remodeled. Not historically, the focus, the lens they were looking through was not, let's restore this to historical, like, Department of Interior standards.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. They were a bunch of volunteers trying to create a space for the food pantry. That was what their lens was, and it's admirable and it's awesome that they've got it. But what that means is that back building is less likely to be eligible for any historic restoration grants or historic grants at all. But the front portion, fortunately, has not been touched. And it still retains a lot of historical features. And as a result, that front portion is definitely eligible for community preservation money under historic rehabilitation and restoration. Mm-hmm. And we have quite a chunk of money in community preservation. And not only do we have a chunk of money, and of course this is all subject to the Community Preservation Committee voting on it, town meeting voting on the money that the Community Preservation thinks needs to be spent on it. But if for some reason the grant money falls through, and I'd like to talk to Cutler and Brady about what they could do for money, and DeCoste, what can you get us from the state? community preservation, the state has historic grants for historic restoration, and you can also bond for community preservation projects. You can bond against future community preservation revenue. And we have not done that. And the thought process is you take, the delta of what you typically would be getting. You can't bond against the state match piece of what they give because you just don't know what they're going to give you from year to year. But you can take a hypothetical on what you'd be getting every year. You'd lowball it, obviously, so you don't violate any regulations. What you'd be getting for community preservation, and you can bond it out for 30 years if you wanted to, whatever period of time you think. So that's another source of money. Of course, we could just go old school. People would go up in arms about this, so I'm not suggesting we do it, but, and say, we just need the money, like, let's just borrow for this. Another possibility is to take a look at when are some of the other borrowings that we've had, like the police station, the regional school district, one of those coming off of the rolls, so that the money that we're putting into those borrowings that we already have, once that comes off, we could borrow that same amount and it doesn't affect anybody. We're not increasing anybody's taxes. We're not, again, this all has to go to town meeting. It's not like we're, like manufacturing this behind the scenes. But, so that's my long-winded way of saying, I think even if we can't get the grant money, there's a lot of other avenues that we can pursue. We can also ask for donations, and we can also ask, like say, South Shore Voc Tech, are you willing to help us, do this stuff, like, or at least oversee a bunch of well-intentioned volunteers. I know, there may be historic restoration groups. For instance, my son belongs to a timber framers guild. Now, that building isn't timber frame, but if it were, they'd be willing to come out and build a timber frame, or restore a timber frame. And a lot of them do this as volunteer work. Like he's gone to Virginia, I know he's gone to Maryland. I know people from Utah have come out, to Maine. They go all over the place to just sort of support each other. So there are those types of things that we can look into. When that back portion of the food pantry was restored, I can't say restored because I really love, but when it was fixed up, we'll say that. Kiwanis, Rotary, Masons, they all had a role. Even people, different church groups, scouts. But you've got to have, somebody who has got their construction supervisor's license. Like you definitely have to have somebody coordinating, and then you need to have somebody, especially if you're going to go for any money that's historic, that's knows what the Department of Interior standards are, and is like, no, you can't do that because that's going to violate that. Stay on a steady course. There are a lot of things that you can do. It's I know when you say Department of Interior Standards, Secretary of the Interior Standards, it sounds like, oh my God, this is going to be an impediment. But they have a lot of exceptions for energy efficiency, for windows, roofs, all that, HVAC, electrical. There's a ton of exceptions. So you could get like roofing, and I'm just making this up, I'm not even saying that you want to do it, but if you wanted to do like solar roofing, but you were able to find, like roofing that still looked historically accurate, even though it's solar and it's all kinds of funkiness and electronics behind the scene, you'd be able to do that as long as the aesthetic of it is preserved. That's what they really focus on.
And that's why I showed that picture of it. It was a different staircase
Yeah.
that reminded me, and I looked to see online different places, and they recreate those tiles were from a style of 1921.
Yeah, those are cute.
And I'm like, wait, the building
Yeah.
was built in 1921.
Yeah.
And so you can do it on the cheap, but it's still accurate.
I think another thing to think about, and Tony, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, and would obviously have to talk to our building inspector, is it an all or nothing? Or do you just start on the first floor and you block off access to that second floor until some revenue's coming in, and then once some revenue's coming in, then you've got a better case to make to town meeting if you need to borrow, if you need to get some money, or even if you need to borrow against CPC money, then you've got a better case because you can say, look, we've already got this revenue stream that's coming in.
Right.
So we know it's a winning formula, and now we just want to move it up to the second floor.
Which is what we were thinking.
exactly
I mean,
what we were
I
talking
think
about.
I mentioned before, anyone I mention it to say, oh, can I get a room there? You know, and it's all professional, all licensed people in the wellness field, who are willing to come in.
But, yeah, if we could.
It's such a great space.
It is a great space. It's got really good vibes. Yeah.
He's got a lot of potential. So,
Yeah.
You know, in doing that, like, you know, you said, doing like the first floor, starting, you know, and just work our way through. I mean, start with one office
Yeah.
and then the hallway area,
Mhm.
and then go forward with all the rest of them.
Now, I'm just saying this as a layperson. I think we do need to talk to our building inspector and say, like, if we were to find a way that we could literally block off that second floor so nobody could have access, no, nothing. There's not gonna be anybody, you know, going AWOL on us. If we were able to do that, what would we have to do to get it into compliance so that you would allow it to be occupied?
Right.
And again, and some of the stuff like, yeah, does the outside, would we want the outside to be painted? Yes. Does it look lovely? No, not really. But is that required for it to be occupied? Again, it may be, you know, I think a lot of times things seem very overwhelming when you think it all has to be done at the same time. But if you can prioritize and break it down into sequential steps, it's a little less overwhelming and a little bit more manageable, and I think people can wrap their minds around it and not be like,
Right,
well,
when
how
you
the
have like
heck?
an action plan.
Yes.
one by one.
Yeah, but I'm all about the
Easier.
little project plan with like,
Yes.
you know, steps, so,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's easier to accomplish it that way.
Right.
I'm actually going to meet 2 weeks with on the grants, you can ask for feedback when you don't receive the
oh,
grant.
okay.
So I actually have an appointment with one of the folks who reviewed the grant. It's a half-hour Zoom, so I'll get feedback as to what they felt was lacking or weak in the grant, and we can make adjustments to the next round to go after it again.
I love that because I do think that if we were able, I think Melissa's presentation is spot on, and I love the fact that there's a change in Medicare that's gonna make, you know, a difference in who's gonna be able to access services. That's a game changer. And I think it's a game changer to say in an application, we're focusing on this being like a mental health building, and we don't have those services in town. And then if you combine it with the food pantry, I feel like you're gonna get struck by lightning if you say no to that grant. You know, honestly, like, you're gonna improve mental health services, you're gonna improve conditions for folks that have got food insecurities, you know, and we're just looking for money to make that building
And
viable.
I'm big on connecting the dots, so like in my mind, when I put that together, I was thinking of all the people that are older that I turn away because I've never been able to accept
Yeah,
Medicaid. It's, you know, so, but also like I have a nutritionist who's interested. And now you have a nutritionist, you have a food pantry right there, you have a council, you have all the referral services. Do we have a nutritionist in town?
not that I'm aware, well, I mean, there might be
Obviously,
like,
doctor's
maybe
office.
Taglieri, you know, Tag Fitness, he might do a little dibby dab in here and there.
But
Yeah.
one where they accept insurance.
Not that I'm aware of, yeah, not that I'm aware of. So I think all of that. So Kevin, what are your thoughts on this?
I like the use, I like the vision. Really, my question is, where do we go to get the ball rolling if the grant is at least a year away? You know what I mean?
I think we really have to sit down with Kerry and get an understanding from him. Kerry,
Him and I have sat down.
okay.
When I was going
Do
after
you
the
think he
grant.
would allow us to do sequential stuff, or?
Well, we you know, I went into the building and took photos to use that as part of the grant, you know, to show them, you know, the condition the building's in. And as I stood in the building, I was like, oh yeah, we could spend $1 million just on this building to get it up to standard, because the access to the second floor is gonna have to be ADA compliant, which you're talking about elevator.
We know that, yeah, we know that, yeah.
But the good thing is, if you look at the building, if you're facing it from the street, to the right, there's a door on the first floor and a door on the second floor, and there was a set of stairs, which
Yes.
had to be removed.
Yes.
And I'm like, perfect place to put an elevator. You already have the access to it.
I love the way you
you
think
could-
about
Yeah.
these
You could put it
things.
right
Yep.
there on that side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, you know, we kicked around what what would that need? It had a new roof put on it some years ago,
And some new windows too.
yeah, and,
I don't know how, like,
so if we
historically
were to get
accurate
the $1 million, you know, we'd have to spend wisely if it was just for that building, yeah. I'll just give you an idea, there's a question that says, project need, describe why this project is necessary in enhancing community economic development. And I put the current conditions of the structure as a blight on the surrounding area, which is comprised of single-family homes. Renovation to this building would have an immediate impact in the appearance of the area and allow for the creation of additional spaces that could be utilized for a variety of uses. The additional building space could potentially allow for the food pantry to expand their services to the community. Space could be converted to offices that could be leased for various professions that provide legal, mental health, medical, and veteran services. The buildings could also be utilized for artisans, shared workspace, or used as meeting and conference space. The town of Hanson could also expand town hall departments and expand various services to the residents. Renovations to the buildings could lead to an interest from the private sector in a future expansion of the site to include additional buildings and office spaces. So that was one of my, to that particular question. So I want to get some feedback to see, okay, what did they feel it was weak?
Well, because initially, like when I first got elected, like 6 years ago, I thought, oh, why aren't we using the front of this building? And I was thinking, I don't know why I always think of Mary Collins, but I feel like she's jammed into that senior center and they don't have enough room. And she's got like the day program, and then she's got, who are folks who, need a little bit more support. And then she's got folks that don't need that support, and they're all on top of each other. And I really hate that for her, but she's so awesome at coordinating and making the best of it that even if you go there, you wouldn't feel the stress of what it probably takes to coordinate that. But I had always thought that part of that building would be great for like the senior center to hold events, or even they provide like a hairdresser, legal fees. They do a lot of social services, with people for like fuel assistance, and even just going over what benefits you're eligible for, like Shine benefits and stuff like that. And so even if the senior center stayed there, maybe they would want to have like a little counseling component. And similarly, I had always thought the veterans agent, that would be way more accessible than having to have somebody come into town hall and maybe feel weird about like people are seeing you come in and, because I know people can feel a certain kind of way about, accessing those services. It's one of the biggest impediments that veterans service agents have is that most of the constituents, who are mostly guys, feel weird about asking for help. They don't want to ask for help, and they definitely don't want everybody and their brother to know they're asking for help. So I had always thought, maybe that would be like a little component, which I think would all be simpatico with what you're talking about.
Right, anything like that.
Yeah.
That serves the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you're gonna give it a whirl, you're gonna get some feedback. But back to the question of whether we could do this sequentially or in pieces. How do we, what do you?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is the building needs money thrown at it to get
But
it,
let's
to get
say
it up
if
to,
we
to
were
get it
gonna
up to
say
snuff.
our
So
initial
which-
goal is the first floor. We'd obviously have to have a ramp for ADA compliance, which I believe there already is one there.
Well, no, not for that front
For the food
building.
No,
pantry.
that's
for the
Oh,
food.
there was, I'm
It's
sorry,
for
but
the-
that had to get taken down.
It's for
This
the-
was years ago,
Yeah, it's
okay.
for the food pantry, and even that one is questionable as far as its compliance with,
It's been rebuilt like 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um, so, yeah, I mean, it's tough to say, really, because if you fix the first floor, if you're gonna go that far, then might as well go for the second floor as well, because there's things up there on the second floor that really probably need more work than the first floor, like ceilings that have come down. Some rooms with the ceilings have come down, and they need repair. Now, the roof is what stopped the leaks and has prevented any additional ceilings
So,
from coming down.
so I guess put a different way, is there a way for us to get a punch list from Carrie? Like, we obviously know the ADA compliance on the second floor, that's, well, ADA compliance and access, period. But getting a ramp into the first floor is gonna be far less expensive than getting an elevator to the second floor, right?
Well, we also have to look at the age of the building. Is there any asbestos in that building that needs to be remediated? Is there any lead in the paint that might need to be remediated?
Also, I know the tiles the floor
Floor
tiling
tiles, so that-
likely has got asbestos, it's not friable, but
Yeah, if it's not the tiles itself, it'd be the adhesive, so there's a lot of things to look at, which is what the grant would help. I mean, it could be a collaboration between trying to get grant money and CPC money to make it all work.
mhm.
And, let me just,
I'd really love to see that, the front of that building, please start there, like the front. I love the way that they've fixed that house up that used to be, those colors are very beautiful, and I think they're still historically accurate. They're a little different than what the hospital was, but they're similar enough that I would love to see the front of that, the whole outer envelope of that building look better.
I'm just trying to get, see if I can locate.
All right, so next steps,
Well, let's put it this way, I'm chasing a grant for that building to try and get it back into shape. I'm doing that no matter what. We're now, as far as trying to use any other types of monies to attack it, we have to decide, I guess, which bucket of money are we gonna use? Are we gonna say, okay, well, we'll use CPC and try and get this building back in shape, don't bother going after the grant, go after the grant for something else? Or, yes, let's use some of the money from CPC to try and get something, and then go after the grant to sort of supplement.
that's what I think we probably need to do.
So try a two-pronged attack.
Yeah, because it's gonna be a lot of money, it's gonna be expensive. But the other thing to keep in mind is we've got a whole committee working on the back piece of that property and making that an attraction. And this is where the economic development piece comes in, because not only will we have some revenue, but we're trying to make that entire property sort of like a destination, for people to go walk the trails and, enjoy nature and all that other stuff and enjoy the park. And one of the things we have talked about, which actually would be helpful too, is looking for grants to connect the High Street to Main Street to the T, so that people can walk without having to play chicken,
And that's what I was thinking too, is like, if you're already, maybe shopping down there, and have a counseling session on nutrition, both ways, it's like, it's
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
That's on our complete streets prioritization list also.
And the other thing would be, okay, yes, that's true. And then also the other thing to keep in mind is that you're gonna have, Egan has got those residential things going up, and then we've got, Rosen is putting 4 where the old liquor store used to be, and that Marangello property is now for sale. I don't know what's gonna happen with that, but pretty likely, somebody, whoever buys it is probably gonna try to put some residential stuff there. So if we are able to connect a sidewalk up to, from Main Street to High Street, that's gonna, people will go into the park, they could, whatever. I think we need to create like a traffic flow there.
Right, and that's why I was saying connect the dots, there's a
Yeah.
lot of dots to connect.
There are,
Mhm.
yeah, there are. So, okay, so I think maybe the next step would be for you to also talk to community preservation about this. They're actually meeting tonight. They're having a forum tonight, and they're talking about future things that people might have that they might want to think about. So you could easily pop down. My husband's the chair of community preservation. I love community preservation. I think it's one of the best things the town has ever done. It's money that can't be touched for anything except for historic restoration, open space, housing. It's like very specific things. So if we get in trouble with the school, you can't touch CPC. If you get in trouble with union, you can't touch CPC. It's literally community preservation. It's to preserve all the things that we love about the town. Historic resources, open space, all of that stuff. So I think that they'd probably be interested in hearing about it. I don't know where they're at in the forum right now, what they're.
Right, I feel
you
like
know.
that was intruding. Could I-
No, it's
Oh.
literally an open,
Oh.
they do this once a year. It's
Oh,
literally an
once a
open
year.
public forum. You can go talk to them anytime just by
Oh.
asking to go on the
Oh.
agenda. But tonight just happens to be their open forum where they're soliciting ideas of like, what are things that people want to do? What could we be using community preservation money to help support and do? The thing with the community preservation is they do always look for some others, like seed money or like, whether it's in kind, like somebody's gonna work for it, or there's other grant money or whatever, because what they don't ever wanna do is be the sole source of funding. Because they wanna make sure that there's buy-in from other groups in town, from other organizations, you know. If you don't wanna do it tonight, that's fine, but I would definitely just reach out to the committee. They've got a page on Facebook. I'll, of course, mention it to John tonight. I'm the liaison from the select board to.
Send my presentation to somebody.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe even just call up and talk to him about it, and then you could go to a meeting, you know, and present. It's a great group of people. You've got representatives. It was one of my favorite committees I ever served on. You've got representation from conservation, housing, let's see, historic commission, recreation committee, parks and fields. Like it's such a wealth of information, and there's one person from each one of those committees. So when a project comes up, they all kind of have their perspectives of, oh, well, we've dealt with this, or did you think about that, or, you know, and you learn a lot. And there also happens to be an at-large position that's open on that committee. So just FYI. All right, so I'll mention it to John, but also reach out. And then I think once you meet with them, I mean, I hate to do this to you, but I think you're gonna have to take the show on the road a couple of times. Maybe even come and talk to the select board about it, so that you've got enough consensus from all these different groups that are gonna have to, you know, because ultimately, whether it's a grant or whether it's CPC, the select board's gotta get behind it for town meeting, right? There's gonna be funding sources. The select board has to be on board with the vision. I'm just one person. I know Ann is very bullish about it because she loves that building too. And I'm sure the other three guys would be too, but we've got to have the conversation with them. I think, you know, we'll get you to talk to community preservation, then get you to talk to the select board, and then we'll have Tony with the grant. It's going to take a multi-pronged approach. Like, I think we're going to just have to, you know, and I think also, and I know you've got connections to make this happen, talk to the historic commission so that they're advocating for that. Maybe come and talk to the food pantry group, to the board, let them know what's going on. Talk to the High Street Park Committee.
I actually talked to Lisa.
Lisa Green?
I think so. At Hanson Day, we talked.
Okay, yeah. So Joe Weeks is the chair of the High Street Park Committee. And even though they wouldn't be in charge of what you're doing, it would be good for them to know about it. You could just come to a select board meeting and, you know, and he could get updated that way, so. I invited him tonight. I told you you were coming, and I said, if you want to, you know what's going on, you can come, otherwise I'll catch you up on it, so what else?
That's about it.
I want to put a bow on it, but there's no bow to put on it right now.
There is no bow to put on
We've
it.
got a lot of different moving parts.
It's all great thoughts. It's all a matter of cost, being able to do it, and time.
Yeah.
It's not something that'll take, I'm sure you're aware, it's not something that's gonna take place overnight. It's a matter of trying to find the funding to make it work. I mean, the estimates I was getting, I said, was about 4.5 million for both buildings. So even if you split that in half, you're still talking about $2 million just to get it to 2023 standards, you know, with the building code.
And I think
So.
it wouldn't hurt to also reach out to Cutler and just tell him, you know, that you've met with us, that we're applying for grants, and see what he can do. I mean, he came up with $200,000 for a soccer field, so, you know, I mean, I feel like Hanson doesn't always get its share of earmarks and grants and stuff like that. The grant thing, I can't say that anymore, because since Tony's come, we're definitely getting our share, but for years we weren't. So, I'll mention it to him as well, but I think, yeah, talk to CPC and then come to a select board meeting, and then, once you do that, then once the select board agrees, then we can get Lisa working on, you know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't just be me telling Lisa to work on things, it should be the select board saying, we want to do this. So what do we do to do this?
I mean, I'm very passionate about it. I think it can work.
I agree. I think it's completely doable. It's just a matter of timing and money. And it, I mean, it, you know, we could, our clothes could go out of fashion while we're waiting for this to happen, but that's okay. You know, it's, a lot of projects take time, you know?
But my concern is that it's gonna get more and more expensive as time. and
It's
the
not gonna
building's
get cheaper.
deteriorate.
Yeah, it's not gonna get, it is, yeah, it's gonna deteriorate. I mean, I will say the main things that would cause it to deteriorate, the town did address, the roof and the windows, because we did have leaks and stuff, but, and I don't think that there's black mold or like anything that's, there were issues, but the ceiling is, you know, you guys saw it is caving, so it needs help. Okay, so, we'll have our people call your people, and I think the next stop is talk to community preservation, because that's one of the buckets of money. And, but also talk to Kurt, because it's gonna be under that, in that historic bucket. So it's gonna need support from the Historical Society and Commission saying, we think this is a priority, we're behind it, in order to get access to that community preservation money.
Yeah, I had access to the second floor, and it's not pretty. And-
No.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and the basement was like, you don't even wanna go down there.
Yeah.
I've seen both, so.
Yeah.
The basement, yeah, my husband needs therapy over there, because he does their HVAC and electrical, you know, on a volunteer basis.
Well,
for
the food pantry's
food
basement
pantry.
is in good shape.
It's,
The building out front is the kind of
Yeah.
basement that, you know, horror movies are made out of.
Right.
it's, yeah, it's scary, yeah,
So,
If you don't like spiders, stay out.
No. no. All right, well, thank you, Melissa. It was good to see you guys.
Nice to meet you all.
And just follow up, you know, we'll just keep it chugging along.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
All right, thanks,
Have a good
guys.
night.
Joe.
Thank you.
Chris, I'm sorry, did you have anything you wanted to say before they leave?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, Frank, thank you for hanging in there with us. So we've got Frank Mahardy of FXM regarding the proposal for updating our Hanson Economic Development Plan. Frank, thanks for hanging in there, we appreciate it. Hopefully you're not billing us by the hour here. I know you have had an opportunity to talk to Tony about the prior version of our economic development plan, and we wanted to kind of talk about next steps to freshen that up.
Is it me?
yes, sir.
Yeah, I, thank you for liking our early report enough to want to update it. I know that the proposal we sent you had a little sticker shock associated with it, which is perfectly understandable. In order to move forward to something that you're all in favor of doing, I think we should have a little discussion on where you are with respect to implementing the old report. What about it did you like? What didn't you like? What did it mean to you? I remember that we had a strong emphasis, or you had a strong emphasis on development at the South Hanson MBTA station, and in my preliminary discussions with Tony. Seems like some things have happened there.
Yes, yep.
I think that in order for us to give you a responsive proposal that you can afford or is within your budget objectives, you need to tell me either A, how much money you want to spend on this, in which case I could tailor a scope of services to do that, or tell me what specifically you think you could use further analysis on to forward your economic development objectives. They're not necessarily two different things, but I'm sure we can come to an accommodation somewhere between the full scope of the old study and what you're interested in doing now and what you can afford to do now. So I think you need to, I would appreciate if you would tell me where you want to go with this and what are your points of emphasis going forward?
I think, you know, I'll speak for myself and then I'll let the other members speak, but I think our primary focus is we're finally at a point where we've got stability in our town planning office, which we haven't had for years, where we're through COVID, yay, and we know that the timing is everything, right, Frank? I mean, that report was done just before we went into COVID. And now we've got all kinds of people working from home, commuting patterns have changed, maybe even what people are doing for jobs has changed significantly. You know, so I think for me, the thing in that report, what we're probably going to utilize it for primarily is who are we going to pitch the town to in terms of businesses to relocate to Hanson? What's our value proposition that we're going to sell to businesses about Hanson, and what businesses would respond best to that? And so I think maybe there's some demographic information we might need to freshen up about what are people, you know, doing for work in town. But primarily, you know, has the change on Main Street, and even just anything that's happening during COVID, has it changed what is attractive to about Hanson to businesses to locate? Does that make sense?
Yeah, certainly, and in fact, that sort of describes what we were trying to accomplish in the original report. We looked at market trends, the labor force, what industries were growing in the region, what assets Hanson had for attracting those industries, what distinguished you from surrounding communities. And I think it can be sharpened at this point because the world has changed in the last 4 years.
Right.
So
That's really why we could just,
I think that
yeah.
what we found 4 years ago was that you had some selective opportunities to develop additional office space, some retail, and some industrial.
Yep.
Based on market conditions at that time. And if we take a closer look at where things are today, I think we can refine what those insights were and suggest ways that you can go about attracting businesses who would be interested in investing in Hanson. The main thing that you need to, that we all need to be aware of is what as you precisely put it, what can you pitch to investors that distinguishes Hanson would make you a place that they would want to invest in and
Yep.
develop something in. And I think that after a gazillion years doing this kind of work, the main thing, and you people on this committee, I don't know how many are there in person, represent, which very few communities have actually, is a bunch of citizens who care about economic development and are willing to put their best foot forward for the town. I think that businesses and investors want to know that they're welcome. They want to be embraced. They want to be helped in the development approval process, and that's where you can distinguish yourself from other communities. Not everybody does that.
Okay.
And reaching out to prospects is a very important thing. You need people within the business community willing to talk to prospective investors and say why they should invest in Hanson, what's good about the town, what they can expect in the way of support from the citizenry as well as the town. And those are the ways you move forward in economic development. It's driven primarily by two things. One is market opportunities, and you can't, we can show you how water flows downhill, and if you want it to flow uphill, it's sort of our obligation to say it's going to take a pump and it will cost you. I mean, you can't have everything you want if the market doesn't support that. We had a very interesting discussion about updating a property in town that sounded really fascinating, and which isn't gonna really be driven by market forces, because you know there's opportunities already there. But it's a will to spend the money to upgrade this building. And I think I'll offer my 2 cents in support of what Tony is trying to do here, which is you really need a professional feasibility study that says this is what it's gonna cost to meet code, and you need a program, which you seem to have developed, that says this is what we really want to do here. And with the program, to inform an engineer, architect to take a close look at the building, he or she can develop a cost estimate for what it's going to take to put it in the shape that it needs to be to support the uses that you want it to have.
Okay.
But the fact that you're advocating for that is the most important step in the process.
That's great. Frank, if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask Chris, who's joined us virtually, if he had any additional color commentary in terms of what our objective is, for the report that we'd like to get from you.
No, I think you said it perfectly, Laura. I was going to answer the question the same way. Just unfortunately, with the timing of the prior report, it was just before the pandemic, and the world has changed considerably since then. It wasn't all that long ago. So just really getting a refreshed report, based on kind of the current state of affairs, I think is most important.
Did you find it useful? And if so, what about it did you find particularly useful, the old report, other than for informational purposes?
I mean, I found it useful. It really helped me visualize a little bit more or focus a little bit more, like focus the lens a little bit more on what have we got for citizens, what in terms of, what are they doing, traffic patterns, like businesses that people are in, businesses we could attract. We were just on the precipice of saying, all right, well, let's make a pitch to the Metro Chamber on these businesses. But now I'm just not sure if those are the same types of industries that would want to relocate to Hanson. So that's why we circled back with you. If I hadn't thought it was beneficial, we wouldn't want it to freshen up. We just wouldn't bother with it at all. I mean, did you find it helpful, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, I did, it has a lot of good information. I'd had some discussions with other folks who would even have a lot more experience, and they thought it was very well written.
Yeah.
And Frank's reputation precedes him as far as his capabilities. I think it was sticker shock, Frank. To be honest, I mean, $40,400. Is there a way to sort of put a finer pencil on that and get that number down? I mean, what's a budget that the committee would like to maybe see if he can even work on that budget?
Well, I think.
Yeah, I think Tony, that's very important. I mean, we can write a scope of work that in our judgment will respond to what your concerns are at this point. Respond to the key things that, based on our experience and based on what we've said before, might be likely to be most useful to you. We don't have to go into great depth. I mean, this kind of work, understand please that this kind of work is very labor intensive. It requires a considerable amount of expertise. It's not just a matter of crunching numbers. You need to look at what the numbers mean and look beyond what they are and what they say, and decipher what's important and what's not important. And thank you, Tony, for the kind words, but our reputation is that, we don't waste people's time. We're trying to come up with stuff that will be useful and implementable, and that will lead you to a place that you want to be. And I'm not sure how this comes across, but it would be helpful to me if you would tell me okay, you don't wanna spend 25 grand, you wanna spend 10, you wanna spend 15, um, and let me take that limitation, which we're always working with constraints. We never have unlimited budgets for anything we do, except for EISs. And that will enable me to come back to you and say, okay, here, for this budget, this is what we think we could do that could most helpfully update our prior work.
If I could, Frank, just in the proposal, when you break it down by categories, I'll just go through it, and the committee can, as I read it, determine which ones they feel might be the most important. Yeah, you have initial meeting and scope refinements, I mean, that, demographics and economic characteristics and trends, would that be a major one to,
I think we do need to have that, yeah.
okay? Market conditions and trends, definite,
Well,
or is that,
define market conditions and trends.
Frank, you wanna take that one?
Yeah, I don't happen to have the, hold on, let me look at the proposal. Can't remember what we budgeted that. Hold on.
But could you explain to the committee market conditions and trends, what would that entail,
Well, if you recall from the last report, that's where we look at industry trends by looking at secondary source data from the Department of Labor and supply side real estate data from subscription data source CoStar, and say, this is where office space is trending, this is where retail space, this is where industrial, and these are the industries within your market area that are projected to add jobs in the future. That's what market conditions.
So yes, we need that. It's
Okay.
like right on point.
Okay, so you have,
I think that's a key task.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I think that's
Yeah.
something we would want you to have, because it's market-driven opportunities.
workforce characteristics, I mean, is that something that major to the?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, business characteristics?
What
Yeah,
is,
again, that, if you look at the prior report, you look at some of the table, I mean, these budget categories follow the outline of the old report. You could see in each of these cases the kinds of tables that were produced that tell you income, occupations, business types. It's not a huge amount of effort to do that. I mean, we've only said we're going to spend 14 hours on updating demographic and economic conditions and trends, and it's not a huge lift for us to do that. And I can see, just looking through this, maybe you don't need I mean, all this stuff, it's hard for me to decipher which of this I would throw out in whole. I might cut back on some of it if we could zero in on things from the prior report, let's say, that you were most interested in.
So demographic and
But again,
economic
if you
characteristics?
tell me what your upset limit is, I can squeeze what I can into that to cover all these bases, and less of a level of detail that we did the prior time, for example.
How about-
I can't imagine us spending more than $10,000.
Okay, $10,000, is that a potential to update that or give that report a refresh?
No, that's not enough. But if 10,000 is what you have, we can say for 10,000, this is what we can do. And
Yeah,
Okay.
for 10,000, for example, we just did something for Circuit in Swansea. For 10,000, we can examine industry trends and real estate supply trends. We wouldn't go into much into the demographic characteristics, and we wouldn't
it's fine.
go into necessarily very specific parcels and opportunities in Hanson, but we could certainly give you an overview and update of the market conditions that prevailed at the time, that prevail now, and compare them to where they were.
I think that's the most important, Frank, honestly, is just to freshen that piece up, because as I said initially, we need to figure out, we need to make sure that the effort that we put forth in pitching Hanson is put forth and to the right parties, and the only way to do that is to know what markets we should be pitching to.
I agree. I think that's a huge, it should be the huge emphasis. And in that regard, market conditions and trends, and projected office, industrial, retail space analyses. That gets you up to close to 10,000, and those will all be useful. That'll all be useful data for you. So if you want, I'll come back and give you a $10,000 version of the key elements of the last study, and leave out the stuff that we can't do for 10,000. I mean, that's about the best I could do.
All right, Kevin, what do you think about that?
It's not a matter for us of sharpening our pencils and say that we could do X, Y, Z for less level of effort than we have here. It's a
No,
matter
that's
of
fine, Frank.
for
Yeah,
us
we
which-
understand.
which-
There's a lot of
which
moving
pieces
parts
that
on
we go
this,
through.
yeah. We understand. Of course, we've now got to look for funding. I just said we could do, but we'll have to have that conversation.
Would you be
Yeah.
able to get me a proposal, Frank, for the numbers and what you determine you could do for that number, and then we'll just go from there? Would you be able
For
to do that?
10,000,
Yes, sir.
Yep,
you want a proposal for 10,000 level of effort?
Yes.
Yep.
Is that what-
Yes.
Yep. Good one. And we will focus on what we think is most critical for you to know in terms of Hanson's assets and where the market is going, and where the trends are, so that you can focus on those types of businesses that are most likely to succeed.
Okay.
How's that sound?
that sounds great, Frank, and we appreciate you spending the time with us, and I'm sorry that we have to nickel dime you, but once we get more economic development, we'll have more money, so then we can go for the Cadillac version up the road.
No, listen, I'm not insulted or offended. I'm mostly flattered that you found the last report useful enough to ask us to come back so soon. I mean, that makes me feel good that you found it useful, and I'm not the least bit offended that you don't want to spend what it would take to completely update the old report. That's okay. I mean, this is the real world. You only have, listening to your prior discussion on resources it's going to take to do that building, believe me, you have a lot of things to do in Hanson, and this is only one piece of the puzzle. So we'll do what we can to help you out.
All right, well, we really appreciate that. We appreciate your time, Frank. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Look forward to working with you again.
Okay.
Okay, take
Thank you,
care.
Frank.
You're very welcome.
Okay. And then we've got discuss Economic Development Committee draft outline. And I think Mr. DePrez?
I had asked Kim to assist in, as she was also a small business owner, to come up with a business outline. Did you happen to put that in your,
I did put it in their folder.
in their folders?
Yep.
So, I mean, it's probably a case of, I don't know if you know, not necessarily want to talk about it tonight, but take it home and study it.
Okay.
And see what you think.
So you're looking for feedback on it?
Yeah.
Tweak it a little bit?
Oh, of course, I mean, that's really just an incredibly rough draft of thoughts and ideas of, you know, where you guys are, what you need to do, what you want to do, how you're gonna do it, how, you know, just kind of like, it's more of like a to-do list, you know, like kind of items that, you know, you need to have.
Okay.
Not necessarily all at once, but, you know, it's a kind of like a little bit of an outline.
Okay. Just thank you so much for doing this. This
Of
is
course.
great. Okay, so we'll take a gander at this and give you feedback at our next meeting on it. And then that brings us to One Stop Grant Program Awards. Mr. DePrace.
Okay, so FY 2024. Let me just get this pulled up here. There we go. Love it when technology. There it is. There we go. So I applied for 5 grants under the FY 2024, and we received 3 out of 5, totaling $273,576. The first is for $100,000, and that's for Brownfield Redevelopment Fund, from the Brownfield Redevelopment Fund for site assessment of Hawks Ave for the land that the town actually does own, and to determine if there was ever anything put out there that is a problem. Because the site that the town was donated, there was only one test pit done when it came time to do a site assessment. Everything else to the east of those buildings was cleaned up. To the west, there was only one test pit ever done. So in essence, we don't know what activity could have taken place there.
Okay.
So this grant will, in essence, is like an insurance policy. It's gonna find out, is there anything there that we need to worry about, or isn't there? But we'll know one way or another. And if there isn't anything to worry about, then we can pursue removing, hopefully, those restrictions that are in the deed, and which would allow Hanson to utilize that property to its full potential.
Yep.
The second one is $74,750. It's a community planning grant, and this is for the development and or creation of what's known as a starter home district under Mass General Law, Chapter 40 and 40Y. So what this does is, the starter home is just what it means, is houses that are about 1,850 square feet of living space. And so, and it creates, in some towns you might hear what's called like a cluster development, where it's smaller lots and a lot of green space. So this would be looking at sort of creating a district of, let's say, smaller lots for smaller homes to make them, that it would become more affordable for young couples or retirees. The last one is $98,826, and it's the Site Readiness Program, which will allow support the redevelopment of the 7.3 acre town-owned property located on West Washington Street just to Industrial Park. So this is property that is town-owned, there's that much land, and so this money is going to allow us to hire a consultant to go out there and look at the soil conditions, the wetlands, and come up with a plan basically to say, what can we get out of this property, either as one piece of property that's sold for a business and or industry, or is there a potential there to, say, create a similar type of industrial park or business park with smaller lots and allow for business increase.
Now, will we go through permitting? Or is it just conceptually what could be there, and then we have to take the next step? I don't know.
I'd have to go back and look at that. I'm not sure if permitting was included, but we can find out. I could take a look
Okay.
at that. So with those 3, over the last 2 fiscal years, we've been able to receive $462,866 in grant monies. And so we have the 2 that are going on now, as you're well aware of, but these are the 3 that will be moving forward. I know the Brownfield, the one for Hawks Ave, I believe that contract has been executed. And the other two, today was it today? No, yesterday I was actually on a webinar with this was put on by the state regarding these grants and the contracting process, and today they sent along the paperwork for the contracting process to begin. So I've executed that. So the contracts will be coming down the pipe, and then we'll get things rolling.
Great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the big one as far as, let's say, at least the Economic Development Committee is the fact of that, the town-owned property.
Yep.
That's business. That's in the business zone.
Yep.
That's something that, we could, as you were saying with the strategic planning, utilizing what we have. And unfortunately, at that time, I could not announce these. I knew we had them, but I couldn't announce them because we were
Yeah.
embargoed at the time.
Yes, yep.
So, but now that this has come out, we can pursue it. I also I pursued another grant, but it's for creation of housing at the LZ Thomas site. There's a grant that's up to $100,000. They determine what you would get if they grant you, if you get the grant. So I applied to that one and I'll see hopefully we'll find out some results in the next coming weeks or months.
Well, even the Brownfield one has got an potential economic development.
Yeah, it does.
Because depending upon what happens, we may have
Yeah.
more ability to pivot on that site and do more than what we ever imagined.
Yeah, I mean, it is in the commercial industrial zone. I mean, it's in let's say a remote or obscure part of town, but it is in a commercial industrial zone. So there is that potential for that property.
Yep.
I'm hoping that maybe we can do something with Hubble to maybe there's the way the lot is configured right now, we have a lot of frontage we have a lot of, let's say, frontage, but it's not on Hawks Ave because of the configuration of the lot.
Yeah.
So there's a 40-foot strip there. I would like to see if maybe the town could pursue purchasing that strip from Hubble so that in essence we could extend Hawks Ave across our entire frontage, which would allow to maybe that develop.
Why do you think they held it back?
They may have just done that here's a piece of property, but here's what they can do with it, not much more. Because we don't want them to do much more, because maybe they're not sure what they want to do with their piece.
Okay, yep.
You know? But if we could get that strip, and then we could extend Hawks Ave across our frontage, we could now maybe, divide that or create another business park down in that area or something else. But it would gain us roadway frontage, if you will, to do something better. So I'd like to see maybe Hanson try and work something out to get that piece. It's like 40 by whatever, 300.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that, so that's interesting.
So that's what I have for.
Well, that's amazing. Any questions, you guys, on that?
No question.
Chris, anything?
No questions, great job, Sam.
Thank you.
Okay, and then meeting schedule with Whitman Hanson Cable Access. So, Kevin, we had a little bit of a fire drill this afternoon. We had that 2 o'clock, okay.
Yeah,
That's
It
on
was
me.
fine.
I tried to sign in
Yeah, that was-
a little.
It's
too much
fine,
too late.
because honestly, I wasn't
Yeah.
even sure we had it. I didn't
Yeah.
even have it on my calendar or anything. I knew it was up in the air, but anyway.
I didn't realize, for some reason, in my mind, I thought he had everyone's email address, that he was working with the members of the committee. When he sent his email and the invite, I didn't pick up on it, so that was odd.
It's fine, so Chris and I ended up joining.
You did, okay, yeah.
And where we landed was, we need to tell him sometimes that we might be available. He gave us an extremely narrow window of time for next, I was like, I was like, 12 to 12:15, I mean, that's what it seemed like.
Yeah,
It wasn't,
right.
but, and so where we landed was we are going to go over the business booklet, the Hanson Economic Development business booklet there. We're going to talk about what our committee does. We're going to talk about the fact that we want feedback from people and input from people. And what else did we talk about? There was a lot there, and he kept cutting in and out on me, so it was like,
You wanna, do you want?
Okay.
yeah.
Let's see. What do we do? All right, so, introduction, you kind of cut it down to like three things. The first is gonna be like the introduction, of the committee, to see who they are, and what you're all about.
Yep.
Then the next one was the going over the basic, business guide.
Yep,
Sorry, my eyes are not good here. Mission statement. Mission
Yep.
statement was actually 2, then going over the business guide was 3. Thank you. And then outreach, call to action to businesses. That's kind of like that was kind of like the rough game plan of how it would start.
does that resonate with you?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I think I
And,
just missed you guys, signed in a little bit late.
Oh, like,
That
I
I
think we
didn't get
finished at like
access, yeah.
2:27.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
and what he was saying was that next Wednesday, they have like this open day where, at the studio, where anyone can, in the community can come and get a message out using their new studio space. And,
Sorry, did they say where the studio space was?
no,
Yeah.
No,
it's very
Okay.
cryptic.
No, I think-
Very cryptic.
no, I think it's redesigned studios.
Yeah,
I think it's the same place they've always
Oh,
been.
okay,
I'm not
alright.
aware of them acquiring any new real estate. I think they've just reconfigured and probably bought new equipment, et cetera, which they do every so often. So I think we left it.
We left it that, he was gonna check if it was first come, first serve, like
Yeah.
if anyone could make it to that next week. And then the action item on our end was to send him the details about the business guide. And then, reach out to him after that. I'll add these notes in as like a side
Yes.
of, this part of the
Perfect.
discussion.
Yeah, that's perfect. And then, I think, yeah, but just put a note that, there wasn't a quorum, so we couldn't
Right.
deliberate. It wasn't like, a
Yep.
formal meeting. It was just a discussion, but, I think we did say we would get back to him with times we could.
Yeah, some dates, because like
Okay.
next Wednesday, I'm in training all
Oh,
day,
yeah,
so
that's right.
I can't do that. I can't make next Wednesday, but if you want to figure out a
So
days.
what, does anybody have any,
We're going off the times he's available, right?
well,
And
no.
Chris is not
Well,
available next
he
week.
went from like, I'm pretty flexible, but, oh, well, next Wednesday I'm only available 12 to 2. And then I was like, well, okay, well, what time do you go? Well, I'm available every day, 10 to 6, except when I have a photo shoot. Okay, well, when do you have a video shoot? I wasn't too sure, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, so, very unclear on his availability, so we're just gonna take the lead and try to throw out some times. So after next week, then you're looking at Thanksgiving week, so that's a wash. So then, I mean, unless people feel like they want to do it that week. So maybe we're looking at the week of the 27th, like would people be able to do something on the 29th at all? Does anybody have any, or any day that week really, but,
I'm wide open on the 29th.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I'd be okay with that.
all right, so why don't we try to do something like, say, would a 4 to 6 on the 29th work for people, or?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's try a 4 to 6. Are you gonna be okay with coaching and everything, Chris?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
actually, we had basketball stats, of course, but we.
Okay.
did the second half that night, so 4 to 6 works great.
Awesome.
All right, so the 29th we'll say, right?
Yeah, we'll give 'em-
Yep,
Wednesday, that's a Wednesday, right?
yep, 29th, 4 to 6 PM, and then,
well, what might be a second?
all right, yeah,
date?
and let's come up with the second tier option for him. Are people able to do the 30th?
30th? 30th is okay, but, yeah,
Is it dicey?
I could do the 30th, the
Huh?
30th is fine for me.
Could you do 4? What's your such?
yeah, no, I was just thinking maybe like 4:30, be safe, maybe.
All right, we could do, well, let's say 4:30 to 6
I'm
o'clock.
okay with the November 29th.
Okay, let's say 4:30 to 6 PM on the 30th.
Yeah, let's try for that.
And again, we're
It
gonna
could
try,
be
we're gonna
one.
lead with the 29th,
Yeah,
but,
that's fine.
but that's our backup position, just in case he comes back and renegotiates the terms of engagement. Okay, so that was great, at least I feel like we're making a lot of progress.
Yeah.
Like, and I have to mention, I like the idea that people are coming to us and talking to us
Yeah.
about ideas and concerns that they've got. So, just so you guys know, as a result of Mark Kruger coming to our meeting, I did end up resuscitating the Hanson Business Network. And we had a very good first meeting last, I want to say it was Wednesday or Thursday, I don't know, the week started to blur, but, and there were probably like 25 people there, some of the original folks from the Hanson Business Network, but actually a lot of new people, which was great. And sort of just generally talked about what's the objective of the Hanson Business Network, because we can make that up. We're not a 501c3, we're not a town committee. We can be and do whatever we want to be and do as long as it's not illegal.
So no problem.
Huh? No, 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 we will not be taking aid from our brethren. So they basically agreed that it's gonna continue to be a bunch of businesses supporting each other, doing events in town like the food pantry fundraiser at St. Patrick's Day, more participation in Hanson Day, that was definitely something. And they're gonna revitalize the website, and then we'll send the town a link to our website to put on the town website, which will be a list of the businesses. So there was a lot of really positive, it was great, it was really great. Everybody seemed super happy about it. Now I just need to get somebody else to take leadership of that, because that was never my intention, but nobody blinked. They were all playing poker that night, so we're working on that. All right, and let's see, our next meeting is December 6th. Do we feel like we want to meet December 6th, or have our meeting with cable be like, kind of put a bow on it for the year and then pick it back up in January? What do you guys want to do? Because I'd like to get two
We'll
new.
do a couple meetings the week prior for the cable, that's probably sufficient.
Yeah, I agree. That makes sense, Chris. He's saying, we have a couple extra meetings mixed in here, so put a bow on it for the year
Okay.
on December. I am actually moving on to.
So our last meeting of the year will be the 29th or the
Yes,
30th?
yeah.
Okay. Are you guys okay with that?
Okay.
Okay. All right, great.
I just got a couple quick things. We reached out, and Kim reached out to different chambers of commerce. South Shore Chamber of Commerce was probably the biggest help. They came back with an email thread that I'll send to everyone. And basically they've, what was his name? You remember his name? What was it? Not Sue. No. I want to say it was Peter, wasn't it?
What?
Well, anyway, I'll send it to you. I can't, of course, can't find the name when you're trying to look for it here. But they're willing to help the committee and actually get some other people involved that deal with them, that can provide, let's say, support or information to the committee. So,
Really?
so in other words, they're willing to sort of meet up with the committee, whether in person or via Zoom, and come in and say, okay, we've sort of said to them, hey, Hanson's the EDC, has an EDC. It's sort of in its infancy. They've been trying to get traction. We're trying to do our best, but we'd really
Yeah.
like some guidance
Yeah.
and some
Yeah.
good thoughts. And South Shore Chamber of Commerce really came back with, hey, yeah, we're willing to help you. And he was like, hey, I added a couple people to this thread, and they're like, yeah,
Wow.
we're willing to jump
Really?
in and help you out.
Kind of
Wow.
like something you're not used to, like.
Yeah, it's so surprising. I love it. I wonder if we should make that our first meeting in January, like kick it off.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I figured, well, I'll get the committee's feedback, and then we'll get in touch with them and say, hey, we'd like to have you guys come in, and this would be the time, you know, maybe January, at our first meeting, have you come in and have a sit-down, and, you know, they can maybe give us some good guidance and some good ideas and some direction on some of the things that we're trying to do.
Yeah, let's see if we can get them in for January. So let's set a date for January, and then that way you'll have a date that we can, oh, mercy me, this ends in,
Yeah.
2023. I might have to go onto my phone and figure out what the date would be. So we'd be looking probably at January 10th or something like that.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Is that doable for you, Chris?
Yep, that's totally fine.
Okay, so our meeting after our cable debut, God help us, will be January 10th.
We'll keep to the 7th.
Is 7 PM still good for you, Chris?
I'm sorry, did you say something?
Yeah, I said, well, is 7 still preferable for you at that point?
Yes, please. That
Okay.
was great.
Okay, all right, so now that we know that, if we can get the South Shore, I would love to kick it off that way, if they're available.
Yeah, it was good to get some good feedback.
I love
Kim
it.
did a lot of good research.
Yeah,
The town, was it Wilmington? I asked her to do some research on different communities and ones that had economic development committees and see what they were doing. And she said that Wilmington had a really good webpage. Unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to get on it to see it, but she says it's a really good webpage. And the good thing with Kim is the fact that she's a small business owner, or was a small business owner, so there's a good feedback there of having someone in-house
yep,
that can bounce ideas, you know, get some feedback.
That's
So
awesome.
She's been a big help.
we love it, thanks, Kim. Okay, anything else that anybody wants to?
Yeah, one more thing. So I know we may have lost a couple of members. Do we still have our committee out for possible new members to join us?
Well, so we have a little bit of, I guess what I would call a technical snafu in that they have to tender their resignation.
Exactly, okay.
And I have reached out to them,
Yeah.
and they both said that they would tender their resignations because of their various competing things
Yeah.
that they're going on, but we have not yet gotten their resignations. So what I'm really hoping is, after tonight's meeting, I'm gonna reach out again, and I'm gonna say, please, guys,
Yeah.
could you tender your resignations? And I
Gotcha.
mean this respectfully, we
Yeah.
appreciate everything you
Oh,
did.
yeah.
Because we want to start the year off, and in order to fill those positions, I need you to resign so that we can get going on filling them.
In our-
Do
in
you
our
want me to
max-
reach out as well?
That would be super helpful.
Yeah.
Maybe you'd have a little more, you know, like little, I don't know, a little more,
Je ne sais quoi.
yeah.
Our max is 5, right? For our-
That's what we're structured at,
Yep.
5, yep.
Perfect.
If we decided we wanted to get bigger, which I frankly would not recommend because it gets unwieldy with too many people and personalities, but if we did decide that we wanted to, then we'd have to go back to the select board and have them take a formal vote to restructure the committee and add members.
Perfect. Okay.
But 5 is a nice number.
That's a nice number, yeah. For
When we
quorum.
have all 5 rowing in the boat, but when there's
Yeah.
3 rowing and 5 bodies, it's a little bit much. Okay, so that's great.
Okay, great.
All right, well then, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded by Chris Ennis.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chris is a yes.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, guys, and
Thank you, everyone.
we'll be in touch about once Tony, finalizes the date with cable, we'll be in touch about roles and responsibilities.